all unique individuals with our own lives and goals and dreams. Is financial planning about simply managing our money or about enabling those moments that take our breaths away? Are we going to be spending our time looking at numbers and calculations only? Definitely not. In this first lesson, let us explore some thought-provoking concepts about money, happiness, and habits. From all of us here at Shaw Academy, a very warm welcome and thank you for trusting us with your learning journey. At Shaw Academy, our mission is to provide you with higher education at a cost that is affordable. We want to make education and learning new skills accessible to anyone, no matter who you are or where you are in the world. With qualifications presented by experts, we offer you globally recognized courses to help you master your skills in a practical, interactive, and in a fun way. My name is Riet Brunner, and I will be your educator for this financial planning course. Guiding clients as well as developing financial planners have been my passion for the last 15 years. I do hope that you will become as energized and engaged with the various aspects of financial planning over the course of the 4 modules as I am. A quick look at my background. I hold BA and LLB degrees, as well as a postgraduate diploma in financial planning, and I further hold the International Certified Financial Planner Professional designation. I've been involved in a combination of financial planning and planner development roles since 2005, from legal advisor, financial planning, as well as formally in the private education system. Well, that is my formal on-paper introduction. But since I really don't like not knowing who I'm talking to, I wanted to introduce myself personally before we get going. I really am so passionate about financial planning because I've seen firsthand the difference that it can make in people's lives. Sharing that really personal journey and being entrusted with clients' lives and goals and hopes and dreams is something that, as a planner, one can never take for granted. But I'm also super excited to be here to guide you through your financial planning learning journey. Financial planning is a unique area because it's relevant to every single individual. Whether you're just starting out and you just want to learn the basics of budgeting, or whether you have a complex investment portfolio, or you're somewhere in between, financial planning is relevant to every single person. And our course is also unique in that we take a 2-pronged approach. Whether you're an individual and you're interested in understanding and managing your own financial life a little bit better, or whether you're a financial planner or you want to become a financial planner and understand how best to add value to your clients, you're in the right place. You won't be seeing me in every lesson, but I just wanted to say hello to you today and thank you for joining me on this learning journey, and I hope to see you in all 32 lessons to come, and I'll catch up with you periodically. Let's briefly look at the structure of our financial planning course. The course consists of 4 modules, each with 8 lessons. You will find that our content and our discussions will become progressively more advanced as we move through the lessons. And then after you've completed all the modules, you will obtain your professional diploma in financial planning. It's always important to understand what the objectives are that we will be trying to achieve for every lesson. So the focus of this first lesson is to introduce you to some basic but important concepts to stretch your thinking about financial planning a bit and to enable you to think continuously about your very own personal and unique circumstances. So we want to discuss whether money can, in fact, buy happiness, and we want to learn some basic habits for financial success. That's one of the things that makes financial planning so exciting. While there are general rules and truths, each of us is different, and our financial planning journey is unique. Why is our course unique though? Well, financial planning globally is very much country specific. You'll find that legislation, products, processes, and so on all differ depending on where you find yourself in the world. So those courses that are available, and there aren't really that many, are specific to a country and its own offering and its own regulatory structure. We want to focus, though, on those aspects that are universal about financial planning, no matter where in the world you find yourself. We all have the same dreams for our lives, don't we? So we're very much jurisdiction agnostic in our approach, and there really is no other financial planning course that takes this approach. During our scheduled lessons, you may of course have questions that come to mind as we work through the content and our discussions. To help you there, I will be assisted by Morpheus, our Show Academy artificial intelligence bot. He or she is here to answer questions that you may have relating to the lesson content. The more questions you ask, the more intelligent Morpheus will become, since we review all our student questions and queries on a weekly basis to ensure that we can provide you with the best possible answers. So please, ask away. On your student page, you will find your course materials, sometimes referred to as your toolkit, under the Resources tab. The course materials include summary notes of each lesson as well as lesson slides. I will keep referring to these resources as they are extremely valuable in your journey through the modules, but more about that later. If for whatever reason Morpheus cannot assist you with a query, please send me an email at support@showacademy.com and I will get back to you with an answer as soon as I possibly can. Now that we have the admin out of the way, allow me to welcome you all to Lesson 1 of your Professional Diploma in Financial Planning. Is financial planning about planning for our money only? Or is there a bit more to it than that? In this lesson, we're going to explore the fascinating area of money and happiness. We've all asked or been asked the question, right? Can money buy happiness? Let's unpack that a bit more today. In addition, we will discuss a few basic habits of the financially successful. So let's start off by looking at money and happiness. It may seem an odd place to start off a course about financial planning, so let's try to understand why. So why are we talking about money and happiness? Who of us hasn't thought, if only I had that car or house or whatever it might be for you, I would be happy. Or one day when I have enough money, I'm going to be happy. But when it did eventually happen, we had some initial excitement and then realized, wow, I feel more or less the same. I'm not substantially happier, and certainly not as happy as I thought I'd be. So when we talk about financial planning, which deals with our relationship with and our hopes and goals for financial well-being, we must understand whether the money itself will actually provide the fulfillment we seek, or whether our goals may be more than that, more than just the accumulation of more money or things for their own sake. Who of you have heard of this concept, the hedonic treadmill? It's really just a summary of what we've talked about, the constant chasing after more things, in the belief that it will make us happy or give us some sense of fulfillment. But it can become a really destructive cycle. I'd really like those shoes. And then when I've bought the shoes, I think, wow, those handbags will go really well with my shoes. Or I really need that watch as well. Or, oh, now I want that car. And can you see how this becomes such a destructive cycle? Because we're just chasing after the next thing and the next thing. How do you feel when you look at this? Does it seem familiar? Always running and chasing after something, with life throwing us curveballs along the way as well. It gets so tiring, doesn't it? This chasing after something. Looking at comprehensive research data is always a good place to start. And researchers have been asking the same question that we ask ourselves. Can money buy happiness? In order to gauge whether there's a link between money and happiness, a number of pieces of research has been done over the past 10 or 15 years or so. The outcomes are really interesting, so let's look at two of them. The first paper, written by Angus Deaton and Daniel Kahneman, was based on research conducted among 450,000 respondents worldwide. looking at one's income, and then two very important aspects that we have to understand when looking at the outcomes. Firstly, they looked at the concept of life evaluation. Now, this means a deeper look at a person's life from a broader, more long-term satisfaction perspective. And then the concept of emotional well-being, which is more short-term focused, the everyday experiences such as joy, sadness, frustration, and so on. So it's really important to keep these two concepts in mind when we look at the outcomes. So what did the research find? Firstly, life evaluation increases as one's income increases. Now, interestingly, this is true regardless of actual income. So, for a person who only earns $10,000 a year, an increase of $1,000 would be as meaningful as an increase of $30,000 would be for someone earning $300,000. So, it looks like money does buy happiness, right? Well, interestingly, emotional well-being only increases up to a threshold point, after which additional income doesn't increase one's daily well-being at all. Remember now that emotional well-being is that everyday feeling of happiness or sadness, anxiety, and so on. So that threshold was determined to be the equivalent, in 2010, of $75,000 of income a year per person. To use another example, if I earn $100,000 and my neighbor earns $150,000 a year, we will both likely be happier on a daily basis than our friend who earns $40,000 a year. But my neighbor probably won't be much happier than I am. Here's an interesting fact regarding our two researchers. Both Professor Kahneman as well as Professor Deaton have won the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, the former in 2002 and the latter in 2015, for his analysis of consumption, poverty, and welfare. So these two heavyweight academics and researchers also realized the significance of this question that is so often debated. If you ever have the opportunity, do yourself a favor and read any works by these two academics. They are truly insightful. I'm going to provide you with some additional reading material in your summary notes. In 2018, research was refined even more in this area, with more detail, more countries, and so on. The research outcomes seem to be very similar to the first study, with specific points beyond which income no longer increases one's broader life evaluation or emotional well-being. Now, this research by Purdue University is based on data from the Gallup World Poll, which is representative of 1.7 million individuals from 164 countries. And then the questions also related to those two aspects we talked about, life evaluation and emotional well-being. Andrew Jebb, the lead author, noted the following: "It's been debated at what point does money no longer change your level of well-being. We found that the ideal income point is $95,000 for life evaluation and $60,000 to $75,000 for emotional well-being. Again, this amount is for individuals and would likely be higher for families." So the outcome really looks something like this. Our happiness or emotional well-being increases with our income level, but only up to a point. Did you know that that threshold point occurs later in wealthier countries for that life satisfaction component? Why do you think that would be? Think about this. Is it that old keeping up with the Joneses attitude? Some wise words from a wise man, Mr. Bill Gates. I can understand wanting $1 million, but once you get beyond that, I have to tell you, it's the same hamburger. But of course, we are always realistic and we know that every person's life and journey is unique. So to pretend that money is not necessary would be an absolute fallacy. We will be discussing various wealth strategies in Module 4. We also don't want to take ourselves too seriously all the time. So in the words of American author and businesswoman Helen Gurley Brown, money, if it does not bring you happiness, will at least help you be miserable in comfort. Remember that the research outcomes are not an exact science, and many factors will actually impact how people answer. Interestingly, even the day on which a person answered the questions had an impact on the answer. If someone asked you about your general everyday happiness over a weekend, you're probably going to be a lot more positive than if they asked you the same question first thing on a Monday morning, right? But it makes us consider this aspect very carefully for our own lives. Let's bring this back to our reason for discussing this at all. Are our financial goals related to the accumulation of more things? Or are they related to using our financial resources to help us live a life that is meaningful to us and that brings us personal fulfillment? We will be talking a lot more throughout the 4 modules about types of financial goals. In Module 2, we're going to focus on the various areas of financial planning related to particular goals. And in Module 3, we're going to look at those unforeseen life events that can throw the most well-laid plans into disarray, things like getting divorced, being retrenched, and so on. A fantastic contributor to the education of both clients and financial planners worldwide is a gentleman called Carl Richards. If you do nothing else after today's lesson, please do yourself a favor and visit his website, www.behaviorgap.com. He has an amazing gift of expressing complex financial planning issues in simple hand-drawn images and one-line sentences. Here you can see him summarizing everything we've talked about in a single glance. As we said earlier, financial planning is so relevant to every one of us, and we will take a few minutes in every lesson to do some personal reflection. Make a note, and if you need more time for this reflection, go back to the slide in your lesson notes and then spend the time you need after the lesson. I would really encourage you to keep a notebook with you at all times as you work through the course. Jot down aspects that you feel relate to you specifically or that you've contemplated and you want to spend more time on. You're welcome to share your thoughts on our financial planning Facebook group as well. You may find interesting insights from other students who may be in fact contemplating the same issues that you are. For today, think about where you are now in your own life. And then consider, will more money make you happier at this point in your life? If not, why not? Do you think that you might have reached that threshold point, in fact? If so, then why? Take enough time to really think about this. Let's take a quick moment to get back to our learning track. Remember, understanding a client's goals is vital to the financial planning process. So understanding the money and happiness relationship is important for both client and planner. We will talk a lot more about needs and goals as we progress through the lessons and through the modules. The second outcome for this lesson is to understand some very basic habits that we can practice for financial success. As you will see throughout this course, important financial habits and strategies are really very complex. Sometimes the simple, everyday changes can have the biggest positive impact on our lives. Some of these habits may seem extremely obvious and simple. Of course, that begs the question, why aren't we all financially successful then? Knowing the benefit of doing something and actually doing it are, of course, two different things. We will be talking a lot about our behavior and decision making as we progress through our lessons. But for today, we're just going to be looking at 6 very basic habits that can make a big difference in your life. First one seems very obvious, doesn't it? Don't spend more than you earn and monitor your expenses. Obvious, but then why are debt levels at an all-time high? What does that mean? It means we are spending more money than we're earning, and we're actually spending money that we've borrowed. So be proactive about monitoring expenses. Be careful about leakage that one can't really identify. Know exactly what expenses are coming up over the next few months. We're going to be talking a lot more about the aspect of budgeting throughout our modules. A very applicable quote at this point. It's not your salary that makes you rich, it's your spending habits. Secondly, have a plan. Do we all need a financial plan that is comprehensive? No, we don't. But being structured in our approach is important. Learn about financial planning and build as you go, but just make sure to start somewhere. And then thirdly, again, something that seems really obvious, right? Make good decisions. Yet poor decision making can be the most destructive thing on financial well-being. We will delve into behaviors and decision making in much more detail later in Module 1 as well as in Module 4. So please make sure to join me for those really, really important discussions. Fourthly, be aware of the consequences of debt. No, not all debt is bad. We are going to be discussing good versus bad debt in lessons to come. But getting caught up in a cycle of debt can be extremely frustrating and lead to anxiety and poor decision making. For instance, you may decide to stay in a job that you absolutely hate and is not good for your personal well-being simply because you need the income to repay debt. While we cannot avoid debt in some circumstances, understand what you are getting into when you do. Did you know that personal debt levels in the US is staggeringly high? Yet service levels are at an all-time low. And interestingly enough, non-payment among younger borrowers is becoming really problematic. Why do you think this is? Are we in fact living above our means from a younger and younger age? Are we chasing those things that we talked about? Are we caught up in that hedonic treadmill and borrowing to fund it without considering where the repayment is going to come from? Number 5, start practicing good money habits early on. It's often not how much you contribute towards your financial goals when you're starting out, but it's about getting started. In Module 2, we're going to work through very practical examples of how starting to save early can benefit a person. Prepare to be amazed at the outcomes. And then in Module 4, we will look at how we can instill positive money behaviors in our children at various ages so that we can set them up well for financial success early on as well. Here's an example to consider. John saves $3,000 per year for his retirement. Fiona saves the same amount per year for her retirement. The only difference between the two of them is that John starts 5 years earlier. So the question is, how much more will John have saved than Fiona at retirement? Is it just the $15,000 that he actually contributed more? Join me in Lesson 3 of Module 3, where we're going to be discussing the answer to that exact question. It is really fascinating and insightful. Finally, have an emergency fund. An unexpected emergency can decimate any good financial plan. By the end of this course, you may be sick of hearing me talking about emergency funds, but as you will see, it is just that important, and the consequences of not having an emergency fund can be really dire. In lesson 3, we're going to delve into the lessons that we learned and still keep learning from the COVID-19 pandemic. The lack of sufficient emergency provision was, unfortunately, a hard lesson for many. So there we have some basic habits that can make a huge difference when implemented. Take a few minutes and reflect on your own personal situation. Which of these habits are you, in fact, practicing? And if you're not practicing them, why not? Remember, it's never too early or too late to start. Throughout the course, we will periodically be checking in to see how far we've come in mastering the skills that we want to gain over the 32 lessons. So let's just quickly look at what those skills are, those outcomes that we're trying to achieve. Firstly, we want to identify and understand financial needs and risks. And we talked a bit about that today. We want to understand the role and value of the financial planner. Now, this is, of course, extremely important and something that we're going to be talking about in almost every lesson. Then we want to understand the various areas of financial planning. Now, this would include things like retirement planning, estate planning, risk planning, investment planning, and so on. And we're going to be talking about these in Module 2. Fourthly, we want to learn strategies and habits for financial success. So that would be the 6 habits we talked about today. And we're going to be talking a lot more about various strategies for various life situations as we progress. And then finally, we want to learn strategies for coping and dealing with disruptive life events, because those unfortunately do happen. And this would be things like divorce, retrenchment, disability, and so on. And we're going to be talking almost exclusively about these in Module 3. So we will be checking in periodically as we progress in our skills. Think of the many people that we encounter every day. Have you ever wondered about the fact that each and every one of them is at a very specific point in his or her life with unique hopes and dreams and fears? Make sure that you join me in Lesson 2, where we explore these life stages in more detail and we understand how our financial planning needs evolve over our lifetimes. And let's evaluate our own uniqueness. Before joining me for Lesson 2, have a brief think about your own life. Where would you slot yourself in currently? Just starting out in your financial journey? Maybe you're newlywed or with a very young family. Are you established in your career and have an older family? Or are you close to that or possibly even in retirement? So think about that before you join me for Lesson 2. Finally, before we finish off today's lesson, here is a challenge for you to take some time on after this lesson. Don't try to quickly jot these things down as I'm talking, and make an actual list, because it's really good to revisit this over time. If you want a substantial amount of money tomorrow, and here I'm really talking about, a life-changing amount of money, what are the top 3 things that you would do with it? Really take time to think about this and write them down. Now, assume that you have been given only a year to live. What are the top 3 things that you would do with your winnings now? And write those down as well. Are they different from your previous list? Please take sufficient time to consider this aspect after today's lesson. On your course page, you will find your course materials available. These include, as we said, webinar slides, summary notes, and then bonus content for selected lessons. If you go to your financial planning page, you will find the resources tab, and under this tab is where your course materials are available. I would really encourage you to obtain the course materials for all your modules. Putting everything together in your own financial planning file would give you a gold mine of resources to use not only for purposes of this course, but also as a reference resource for your own life. You can refresh yourself on the consequences or considerations for specific events, should they occur in your life. I am personally a big note taker myself, and if you are too, you can note down all your particular thoughts and your own life considerations at the relevant sections in your file, both as we talk through them, during the lessons, and afterwards. I've often been asked, can I do a quick DIY financial plan for myself? And as much as I'd like to say absolutely, the truth is that's probably not possible. Unless you're a financial planner yourself, of course, as it really isn't a quick and simple process, given that our financial lives have so many components. What I did put together for an article I wrote and have made available as bonus content for this module is a very simple and quick DIY financial wellness check, which can point out some obvious gaps or focus areas for you specifically. So please make sure that you print out that page and then do the wellness check, which would be a great reference point for you as we talk through all the components of our financial lives in the lessons to come. So there we are. That is Module 1, Lesson 1, done and dusted. Hope it's given you a bit of food for thought, and that over the duration of this course, you'll develop a bit of a new way of thinking about financial planning, your money, and your life. You won't be seeing me in every lesson, but I just wanted to make sure to say a personal hello to you today. Thanks so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch up with you again soon. As you work through the course, always remind yourself what brought you here today. Do you want to understand and manage your own financial life? Are you considering a career in financial planning, or maybe you already have a career in financial planning, but you want to expand your knowledge and your way of thinking? Or do you just love learning? Whatever your reason for being here and whatever your personal destination, let's work together to get you there. I want to finish off today's lesson with a quote from Mr. Albert Einstein. Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. Thank you so much for joining me for this first lesson. Take care, happy learning, and I'll see you very soon for Lesson 2.